he's making up Bitcoin right now. Oh, the guys jumped. It's got a long ways to go. Finish, well, it's at 10%. 38.4. Considering it was that about 63 or 64,000 per day.
Converters off of the vehicle this weekend. Call us meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Boone.
Here.
Doden.
Here.
Schott.
Here.
Swiggin. Here. Tiedemann.
Here.
Rolke.
Here.
Mayor Anderson.
Here.
And then Bora.
Here.
Hofer.
Here.
Muller.
Here.
Peterson.
Here.
Chairman Bork.
Here. And it was sent out. A motion to adopt the agenda.
Doden moves we adopt the agenda.
Second. Motion by Doden, seconded to adopt the agenda. Any further discussion? Here none, all fair say aye.
Aye.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Chet, second by Dan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Now we're in a joint public hearing regarding ordinance 2021-03, temporary ordinance regarding the issuance of local medical cannabis establishment permits and/or licenses. Is this the public comment period?
Yeah, and I can just, for both boards' purposes, the idea behind this is to stay ahead of any potential problems that could arise as a result of what the state does or doesn't do with medical marijuana. They're still in the process of trying to establish their regulations. The idea behind the ordinance is to basically be a moratorium on granting any permits locally until we know what those regulations look like. So you can adopt zoning regulations or other regulations at the council level that would address these issues should they arise. The law is set to go into effect July 1 without regulations. If it happens, someone opened a medical marijuana place before you had a regulation in place, potentially they could be grandfathered in, and they may not meet the criteria you ultimately determine would be necessary for local licensing. So this is a temporary ordinance to wait and see what the state does regulation-wise. It'll give you time to adopt your own regulations if you choose to do so with respect to location and licensing of medical marijuana establishments. So, the process would be if it's something that the Planning and Zoning Board would recommend to the council, they do so because it is an amendment to the zoning ordinance. So their action would be to recommend the adoption of this ordinance to the City Council. Then the City Council is required to have 2 readings of the ordinance. The first one could be tonight if it is recommended by Planning and Zoning, and the second one would be at your meeting next June 7th. We don't have it next week, that's right. On June 7th, and then it get published on the 17th hearing. It's got an emergency clause, so it go into effect upon publication. So, this is the time for other public input.
Can I ask a question during this period?
Sure.
So, I didn't read this because it's the first time I've seen it. Once the state figures out their regulations and puts them in place, does this give us a certain amount of time then for us
It does not.
to review the state's regulations, or we automatically are going to follow the state's regulations?
No.
Or this prevents anybody from doing anything?
The idea is to prevent them from grandfathering in until the state has its regulations, and you can react to them.
So 6 months from now, state gets their stuff in order.
Then you can set your own regulations based off that.
But this still This
This would
would,
be in place.
this wouldn't block them from getting one following the state's recommendation, the state's regulations.
It would, because it says no licenses will be
Okay,
issued locally.
Haven't read it.
Yeah.
So- Okay, so this would block any licenses
Correct,
until we lift the ordinance.
correct.
Is the state law probably going to have some direction in there? I'm assuming a lot of municipalities are doing something
This,
like this.
this comes as a recommendation from the league. They hired a couple of attorneys to prepare draft ordinances and are recommending all of their members to do something if they want to be involved in regulating.
I'm assuming the state's gonna tell municipalities, you got 60, 90, 120, 180
They,
days, whatever.
who knows what's going on? Yeah,
Okay, all right,
so
thanks.
this is the best we can do with very limited information, other than July 1st, it's supposed to be legal.
So there's municipality, the municipal league
This is,
drafted this ordinance?
yes.
Going through the same process, right?
They are all over. I don't know how many, but all of them we represent, I know. Minnehaha County last week, they're being recommended to do the same thing at the county level. Someone could open up a place outside of town and not be subject to city
I was
regulations.
gonna say, like on our end, we could come up with a rule saying it needs to be like a storefront or something like that. 'cause
Right.
Instead
you
of just
might-
out of your living room.
Yeah, and it's gonna be,
Zoning.
permitted in a commercial
Yeah.
setting, and you may wanna say setbacks from a daycare or a church or a school, those sort of things, so you have a little more control.
I know we haven't talked about it at a meeting yet, but is it the city's intent to license all these? Or if any of them come
I
up?
mean, you have to see what the state does, I think regulatory wise. They're gonna be the ones to license them, I don't know.
This is medical, this isn't the rec.
This is the medical. Correct.
Gotcha.
I mean, I think there's probably less concern in a smaller community, but you don't wanna be the one having to walk up across the street.
15 dispensaries.
Yeah.
I heard there are 2 dispensaries in Talking Yankton already.
I'm sure.
She's gonna do it.
For medical or rec.
Not sure. It would have to be medical, so that recreational things.
It's
For
decided in
long.
court.
courts decided to,
No, they've had arguments in their hands at this point.
so that one's on hold, until the court said.
Yeah, because, well, no one didn't
No.
do anything. The circuit court judge ruled it unconstitutional, so. But I think they're still moving forward with some study groups and a lot unknown out there. But if your board thinks that's appropriate, then we need to have a motion second to make the recommendation to the council to adopt temporary ordinance.
I'll make the motion.
I'll say-
Dan made motion, second by Brad, to recommend the city council for adoption of temporary ordinance 2021-03. All in favor, say aye. Motion carried. Now we can just, motion to adjourn the planning commission.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Now we have,
Now, the council could have their first reading of the ordinance. So we don't need to vote on it, just need to reflect in the minutes that there was a first reading.
No motion, no nothing.
No. And they need to have 5 days pass. I think you could have a motion to have a second reading on June 7th.
I make a motion to have second reading June seventh.
Second.
motion by Tiedemann, and seconded to set a second reading of ordinance 2021-03 for June 7th, 2021. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Set. No further business for the council. You can adjourn.
Do we didn't actually have the words that this is the first reading?
It's reflected in.
Okay, all right.
You know, if we're getting ahead of ourselves.
You want to keep it back?
Setting the date for the second
I
reading.
can see
No,
that.
you keep it.
Okay.
Good, you know, huh?
Alrighty then, that was that.